could get started.
Okay. So, hello everyone. On behalf of Sakya Monastery, I would like to welcome back our presenter this evening, Elisabeth Benard. For those who don't know her, Elisabeth is a retired professor of religion at the University of Puget Sound and author of many books, including the Sakya Jetsunmas, which is our topic tonight. Before we get started, there are some resources I just posted in the chat. If you can see them, I don't know, you may not, but I'll also post them again at the end. And if we can stay muted throughout the presentation, that would be great. And Elisabeth, I think at the end, there'll be some time for questions. And if you can post your questions in the chat, that would be wonderful. And if you find this presentation beneficial, we will have, if you want to make a donation to help keep these presentations and these classes going, there'll be a link at the bottom of the page that you can use. Okay, so Elisabeth, it's all yours. Oh,
Okay,
wait,
so
I have to unmute. Oh,
please
there you
be
go.
a little patient. Yes, I have to share my screen. Yes. And let's see. Okay, part 2. Share, I guess. Okay, is that working? Can you all
It's
see it?
working. Yep.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. All right, so good evening to everyone, and I thank the Sakya Monastery for inviting me again. It was a pleasure the first time, so I'm delighted to be here one more time, and I'm glad you're all coming back for a second part of this presentation. I overheard that there were a few of you that were not able to attend the first one, so I'm sorry about that. There might be a few things that might not be as clear tonight for you as the others, but there is the YouTube presentation, which you can look at for part 1 later on. And if you have any specific questions, feel free to ask me at the end of the presentation. So today it's going to be part 2, and it's going to be mostly on the Doma Palace family, right? There are 2 main branches in the Sakyas. There's the Punsok Palace, which is Dzogchen Rinpoche's palace. And then there's the Doma Palace, which is the 41st Sakya Trinley's palace. So I'm going to be talking about his family. And of course, Jetsun Kushok is the oldest child in the Doma Palace family. And so basically it's from 1900 to the present. And I'm going to be concentrating on these 3 people. The maternal aunt, which I mentioned last time, Damo Trinley Palger, who is very, very important because their actual mother of Jetsun Kushok and His Holiness died early. So basically she took care of them all her life. And then her niece, Jetsun Kushok, Chimi Luding, who I think you all know. And then only one of the grandnieces, and she's the oldest of the new Jetsunmas, and her name is Jetsuma Kunka Trinley Palger. She's the oldest daughter of Ratnavajra, who is the 42nd Sakya Trinley. So these are the 3 that I'm going to concentrate on tonight. So first I wanted to just show you a few photos. There's the young Jetsun Kushok when she's 19 years old at Sakya. So that's in 1957. Then the older Damo Trinley Palger when she's in India. This must have been like in the early 1970s because she died in 1975. So, and I'm assuming she's in her 60s at that point. And then the very young Jetsuma Kunga Trinley Palger, who became a nun because she wanted to, it was her own volition that she wanted to be a nun at 10 years old. And then her mother and her went on a trip to East Tibet to come to a specific area called Derge. So here she is in Derge at 10 years old in 2017. Yeah. Okay. Yes, 2017. Okay. So this is the Doma Palace. In Tibetan, palace is Podrang. So sometimes you hear people refer to it as Doma Podrang, but it just basically means palace. And this is about the only photo that I have of the Doma Palace, which is not a very clear photo, but you can see that it's quite a large house. It had over 80 rooms, and there were two main sections. The front only had 2 floors, and then the back had 3 floors. And there were 2 big courtyards. The first one, when you entered, was very wide. In fact, if you had a truck, you can enter, a truck. And that's where was basically a more public courtyard. And then there was an inner courtyard where you had to go up a few steps, and that's where the family usually would dismount from their horse. I can't really show you this all very specifically here, but I'm trying to give you this sense. So here's a few things, a few facts about the Doma Palace, that there were about 80 rooms, there were 20 to 25 live-in servants, and they ranged from everything, Of course, there's always a lot for the kitchen and the cleaning. And then there were some attendants that were for each of the family members. Then there were managers, in their families. There were monks, some that were ritual masters. So these were the different types of people that lived in the house, the servants. And then each of the family members had their own practice room. And I found it interesting that each had a name. So the father's room was known as Hivadra Cave, which of course, Hivadra is one of the most important deities in the Sakya tradition. And then the aunt's room, the one I'm talking about presently, was Green Tara Cave. Then Jetsun Kushok's was Auspicious Circle. I don't know exactly what that means, Auspicious Circle. I never found out, but that's her room. And then His Holiness room was known as Eternal Happiness. So you can see these all very auspicious names, and that especially I'm very surprised, not surprised, but finding out that they were caves, that they named them as caves because they were just rooms. But when you really think about the practitioners, a lot of them would do retreats in caves, that their own room would be known as a cave. And so this again kind of reinforces spiritual practice. And then the largest room in the house, aside from the kitchen, because the kitchen's quite big, is this very large reception room, which was known as the Great Window Room because on the south side, it was covered with glass windows. And it could accommodate about 20 people. So it served many, many purposes. This is where the aunt married the 2 brothers. There were a lot of empowerments given in this room. There were many guests that were received in this room. So, and especially since it's all full of glass on the south side, it was quite warm in the winter. And you have to think, all the glass is coming from India on the yak's kind of side. So just imagine the difficulty of even bringing that much glass to the Doma Palace. So this was the largest room that they had. And then there were many other rooms and shrines, and there a vast kitchen, and then lots of storerooms for all kinds of food, for herbs and different kinds of medicines, for all the horse paraphernalia or tack, lots of ritual objects. And so this is just a little bit of a sense of what the Doma Palace is, but very sadly it was destroyed probably in the late 1960s or early 70s. Nima and I, my husband and I, went for the first time to Tibet in 1983, and we stopped in Sakya on our way to Lhasa, and there was nothing left of the Doma Palace. There was something left of the Punsok Palace, which I think was the garden area, but nothing left of the Doma Palace. So both palaces, the most important thing is that they need an heir. So the Doma Palace was having a little difficult time getting an heir. These are the two brothers. The one on the left is Dakchen Kunga Rinchen, who His Holiness and Jetsun Kushok consider their father. And then the other one, not the older man on the throne, he's the grandfather, but the younger man right next to him in that beautiful brocade jacket, that's the younger brother, which is Nawang Kunga Gyaltsen. And in Tibet, a lot of times, even if there's a co-marriage, the oldest brother is always referred to as the father, and the younger brother is always referred to the uncle, regardless of who the biological father is. So this is how Jetsun Kushok and His Holiness refer, that the one on the left is their father, the one on the right is their uncle. And so these two brothers married one princess from the Lading family. Her name was Yangchen Palmo, but she died during childbirth. So this was, this was a real tragedy, but they had to continue, and they had to find another wife because they needed an heir. And so here comes the Perncho brides. So the first Perncho bride, and Perncho is a very famous family in the Gyeongsang area, which is kind of like South Tibet. And the oldest brother becomes a cabinet minister, so a very, very influential position. So Damo Trinley Palger, the aunt, comes from the Perncho family. So in 1927, she's chosen to marry the two brothers. And though for 10 years, they did many, many rituals for performing to bring forth a son, there wasn't any success. She did not conceive at all. So this was really a problem for the family. They liked her very much and they did not want her to leave, but at the same time, they needed to find another bride. So on the grandmother's side, the paternal grandmother's side, they said, well, why don't you ask her youngest sister? She's not married. And so that would be, more beneficial. That way, we're not going to insult the Pernchos. Damo Trinley Palger will stay, and we won't antagonize anyone. So this, as I mentioned last time, now Sonam Dokar is invited, the youngest sister, and it's a secret marriage again. She doesn't know that she's going to get married, but she marries the two brothers. And even though the aunt wanted to leave and become a nun, Sonam Dokar said, no, you're not leaving. If you leave, I'm not marrying. So they became co-wives. And you might notice that her title is Dagyum and not Damo, because Damo is a title that's given to every single wife who's married to the Kon family. But Dagyum means mother. So she becomes the mother of Jetsun Kushok and His Holiness and two other children. So she gets the title of Dagyum. But I'll first talk about a little bit about Damo Trinley Palger. So she's really quite an extraordinary person. And she was well known as a great Dharma practitioner. And she, from a very early age, she cared about the Dharma. A lot of these noble families, the children have a plot of land which they get income from. So every year they would get a small income. Now, most of the kids would want to buy something like jewelry, brocades or something, but not even at a very young age was she interested in that. Immediately, she would use the money to buy butter and offer butter lamps, everywhere. So from a young age, she cared about the Dharma. And then in 1938, that's when Jetsun Kushok was born. She cried all night for at least a month, and Damo was in charge of her. Like, her own mother was kind of weak, in terms of health. She was frail. So the aunt, her sister, took care of Jetsun Kushok. So then she learned to take naps in her meditation box. And then from that time on, she never slept. And she never slept in a bed except at the very, very end of her life. She always took these naps throughout the night in her meditation box. And if you don't know what a meditation box is, it's a place where you can only sit cross-legged. You cannot extend your legs. And then there's a little back for, a wooden back, but you really should be sitting erect. You should not be leaning on that wooden back. So it's, if you're not doing meditation or something like that, you're going to be in pain quite quickly. And so this is how she took her naps throughout her life. And both Jetsun Kushok and Sakya Jetsunmas praise her so much for her Dharma practice. And like she did million recitations of Guru Yoga verses, millions of mandala offerings, all kinds of other mantra recitations. And then even when she died in India. In the very hot July, she stayed in Tukdam for 4 days, which is really quite remarkable. For those of you who don't know what Tukdam means, it means, like according to the Tibetan tradition, everybody has a settled consciousness. And the settled consciousness does not necessarily leave when you're pronounced clinically dead by, like kind of Western medicine. And so as long as your settled consciousness remains, your body doesn't go into rigor mortis, it remains supple. There's no foul odors coming out of it and things like this. And so this shows great Dharma practitioners are able to stay in Tukdam. Some can stay much longer, some shorter, but for her to stay, especially on those hot days of July, it really shows how deep her practice was. And then, of course, she was a very capable administrator, overseeing all the aspects of running the Doma Palace, which you could imagine was very extensive. And as she's known, she saved the Sakyas because one thing, the mother died in 1947, the father died in 1950. So she was in charge of everything for Jetsun Kushok and His Holiness. And so she found the best teachers. She made sure they were very well trained. And this was so crucial, especially when they went into exile. So she's seen as kind of the savior of the Sakyas. And then another thing I found out is that she's a great storyteller. And you could just imagine, that's a great asset when there's no radio or TV, that you could probably just tell stories, all night long and sip tea, and everybody would be, so interested to hear your stories. So this is a little bit about her abilities. Now, some of her qualities. She was known as a very kind and caring person who helped whenever she could. And people repeated this to me over and over and over again. And the other thing is that she's a very big risk taker, and she's very decisive and made astute decisions. And she had to make many decisions almost by herself after the father and the mother died. And so the other thing as well is that she's very loyal, but if someone tried to hurt her, she fought back. She was not, she was tough. She was tough. Also, she was very intelligent, very curious. One time, one Indian scholar came to look at the Sanskrit manuscripts, and he had a camera. Right away, she wanted to look at the camera. What does the camera do? How does it work? So she was very intelligent and curious. And she worked well with others, including her younger sister. And many of these qualities, I think Jetsun Kushok has too. That this she received from her aunt, who basically raised her. Now I'm going to talk about the younger sister, who's the mother, who is not really talked about too much because she dies fairly young. So this is Damyum Sonamdolkar. She had 4 children. The eldest is Jetsun Kushok. Then the second one was a son who died very, very early, and just when he was 3 years old. Then there was another sister, which was known as Jamyang, but and His Holiness is the youngest. So since His Holiness is the youngest Jamyang, he couldn't say Jamyang when he was young. So he would call her Ayang, Ayang, and everybody thought that was very funny that he couldn't even pronounce his sister's name. But she also died in 1950. So, there was a lot of tragedy going on. So only 2 survived, Jetsun Kushok and His Holiness. And she was considered physically attractive. Compared to the aunt was kind of short and stout, and she didn't care about makeup, and that she didn't care much about those types of things. But the younger, the mother, was quite attractive, tall too, enjoyed wearing makeup, and I think Jetsun Kushok looks like her, not because I've ever seen a photo of the mother, which I don't know if it exists at all, but just the way they explain it to me, how, because I feel Jetsun Kushok is attractive, I feel she's tall and everything. So she gets a lot of the qualities from the aunt, but I think she gets her physical appearance from her mother. And the mother was very quiet. She didn't even reprimand the servants. I mean, she was very, very soft-spoken person. And but she enjoyed sewing. And so they go on a pilgrimage to Nepal, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. And she bought a sewing machine. So she was the first person to have a sewing machine in Sakya, and she loved to make things. Now, this is something also that I think that Jetsun Kushok inherited from her mother, because, she likes to crochet and make things. And so this is something that she was good at. I don't know anything about her Dharma practice. I never found much about it at all, but I do know that she was very kind and caring, like Dongtong Rinpoche, that some of you know, who lived in Shoreline. He told me this story that was very interesting. He told me that he met them both, and he described them to me and everything like this. And somehow we got into I forgot how we got into the story, but what I found out is that their mother had received a very precious pill from their grandfather, and she had it. And then she gave this precious pill to Tongtong Rinpoche. And he considered this pill so precious that when he left Sakya, those was one of the few possessions that he took with him, plus some ritual instruments and things like this, objects. And when Sakya Trinley gave Lamdre in San Juan Island, he thanked him. I think he also asked him to do another ritual. And then he thanked him, and he gave this pill to Sakya Trinley. And Sakya Trinley was delighted. And so this was how I found out that she was kind and caring. And but very sadly, she died when she was only 29 years old. And at the time that she died, Jetsun Kushok was only 9 years old. His Holiness is only 2 years old. His Holiness always says, I don't remember my mother at all. So you could see the importance of the aunt in caring for them after their mother died. So now the very first pilgrimage, this is Jetsun Kushok's first memory. When I asked her, I said, what's your first memory? She goes, oh, the pilgrimage of 1944. And I said, oh, and so what did you do? And so they went to Mount Kailash. Then they went all through Nepal, to all the important places like Bodh Gaya, Swayambhu, where the Buddha offered himself to the tiger, and other places, Parping, where Vajrayogini shrine is. And so I said, well, why did you go on pilgrimage? Well, the young son had already died. The uncle had died. And so now they wanted to make merit for their rebirth. And so that young son, who was the first son, died. There was no son, there was no more son. They needed another heir. And this is before Sakya Trinley is born, because he's born in 1945. So they go on this very extensive pilgrimage to get another heir. So this was her first, and I describe it very well in the book, so if you want to read more about it, I would recommend reading it in the book. Yes. And this is what happens. This was taken maybe in 1948, 49. Jetsun Kushok said this was a setup photo. It was done in the courtyard of the Doma Palace. But in 1950, there was a big influenza epidemic in Sakya. And after officiating over 11 funerals, the father passed away. So you see the mother passed away in 1947. And then the father passed away in 1950, early 1950. And Jetsun Kushok said that she was in the hallway and she heard some crying, but she didn't know what happened. And then she went to her aunt's room, and the aunt fainted. And the servants didn't know what to do. And so Jetsun Kushok knew that the aunt had certain medicine. And here she is, she's how old? She's 12 years old, she's not that old. And right away, she gets the medicine, she mixes it with butter, and she puts it on the palms and the soles of her aunts. And then she puts a little bit medicine on, everybody has a big fire brazier, kind of charcoal in their room to keep the room warm. So she puts some of that medicine on the charcoals to make smoke. And then eventually the aunt revived. And that's how she found out her father had passed away. So it was, a shock to everyone. And so now there's very few people left, because the young son is dead, the uncle is dead, the mother is dead, the father is dead. So now it's just basically the aunt, but there are paternal aunts from Jetsun Kushok's side who do help the aunt. And then there's a very famous abbot, Kenjin Champo Sangpo, who does help the aunt. But still, there's a lot of responsibility now for the aunt. And so, so now the main thing that the aunt wants to do is to make sure that they're going to be well trained. And of course, the main thing you have to learn is Lamdre in a very extensive way. Now there's a lot of discussion, where should they study Lamdre? One of the best lamas was Zongsar, Jamyang Zongsar Khyentse Choki Lodro, and he's in Kham. Kham is not safe now because the Chinese are slowly encroaching from the east, and Kham is in the east, so it's better to stay nearby. Some want them both to stay in Sakya, but others are saying, no, let's go to Nor. And so in Nor, there's this very famous abbot, Nawang Chimpa Lodro Ningpo, also known as Dampa Rinpoche. And so they're brought to Nor in 1950, and they study there for 4 months. And so that's goes all very fine. And then they're called back because they have to go to Lhasa. Now, you see, now the aunt is a little bit vulnerable because there's no male relative of the Doma Palace except the 1-year-old Sakya Trinley, so, I mean, we're not 5 years old. And so there's a land dispute, and they're trying to take some land from the Doma Palace. And so she's not happy with this, but she doesn't feel that she will have enough people supporting her in Sakya. So she goes to Lhasa to settle this dispute. And so she takes Jetsun Kushok and Sakya Trinley, before he's actually regarded as Sakya Trinley, to Lhasa. And so during that time, they also received Chenrezig Wang from the young Dalai Lama. This other photo is in Norbalinka, but this is the summer palace of the Dalai Lama, but this is not the particular place where the Wang took place, or Chenrezig empowerment. And so they both remember this very well, because it was a very important empowerment given by the young Dalai Lama. And then certain tukuls, or reincarnations, were given privileged positions. They had little tables and they were very close to His Holiness. And so some of you know that Jetsun Kushok, she liked to dress up as a monk. She was kind of a tomboy in that way. So they all considered her a monk. So they gave her one of those privileged positions. And on the placard, it says, Monk Dungse, you know, of the Doma Palace. So she's very pleased that she passed herself off as a monk. And so that was one of her memories of this thing. And then Sakya Trinley, he's like 6 years old, and he remembers that he was one of the people chosen to throw the flower during the empowerment. But there was one of the, you know, those enormous microphones that they had in those days. So that was the first time he saw the microphone. So he was almost so awestruck by the microphone that he almost forgot to throw the flower. He did, but he almost forgot because he was very involved with the microphone. And so, and then also Sakya Trinley, it was a 2-day empowerment. He remembers that the first night, they all had the kushu grass, and there were so many people at this empowerment that everybody holding the kusha grass to take home, they felt like they were in a field. But the one thing they really disliked were there were also a lot of Chinese filming everything. So during the time they were in Lhasa, there's discussion about who's going to be the next Sakya Trinley, because not only did the father of the Doma Palace die, but in 1950, the father of the Punsok Palace, who was the present Sakya Trinley at the time, also passed away. So now, who gets to be Sakya Trinley? And so everybody thought that Dr. Rinpoche should be Sakya Trinley, since he was the oldest one. He was 21. But the younger brother wasn't completely in accordance with this. And then there was discussion about this, and then the central government got involved, because ultimately the Dalai Lama is the one who decides who becomes Sakya Trinley. And so there was a divination done by the Dalai Lama, and it was the young one, who is now the present 41st Sakya Trinley, who was chosen. But there was a little bit of friction between the palaces concerning this decision. So this is what happened. This all happened in Lhasa. And then afterwards, they again returned to Nor, because they had to keep learning about Lamdre. So they returned to Nor in the 6th month of 1952, and they studied for a year there. But Dampa Rinpoche, who I mentioned before, he passed away in the 4th month of 1953. So he wasn't able to complete everything that, that they had to receive. So now his heart son, which is this person, Kansar Shapdrung, Nawang Lodro Tenzing Ningpo, finished up everything for them. But he is one of the older brothers of Lama Kunga, you know, who lives in Berkeley, California. And he died a little mysteriously. They said they're not quite sure what happened to him, if he was poisoned or not. But to backtrack, while he was giving Lamdre, and especially when he was intoning the Guru lineage, whenever he would come to his Lama, you know, Dampa Rinpoche, he would break down and cry. He felt so strongly towards his Lama. And you know, Sakya Trinley said, this shows like the great devotion that he had towards his Lama. And Sakya Trinley gave me this photo. So I'm very happy that I was able to get this photo. So I'm just kind of highlighting a few of the teachings that they received, and some of the teachers. I can't really spend the whole time just, you know, explaining this. It's much better in the book, you know, but this is how it goes. Now, another Lama who is very important to them, I'm sorry this photo is kind of cut off. I couldn't find another photo. His name is Nawang Lodro Rinpoche or Naglo Rinpoche. And this is the reincarnation, not the one that taught Jetsun Kushok and His Holiness, but the one that lives now in Oregon, in Eugene, Oregon. So Naglo Rinpoche has a lot of reputations for many things. And one thing is that his rituals are very, very effective. And so when they were having so much trouble to have an heir for the Doma Palace, he was asked to help because of his reputation. Now, he was reluctant to help them because he was teaching the very young Chogi Trinchen, and he didn't really want to interrupt this. But Chogi Trinchen said, no, this is more important. You know, they really need an heir. You must go with the family and help them. So he traveled with them. He did a lot of rituals for them. And then in the end, there was success. And Jetsun Kushok goes, his rituals always work. And so the young Sakya Trinchen was born. So that was the very first thing that he really helped the family tremendously. And then he had a lot of teachings. So he gave many teachings to Jetsun Kushok and His Holiness, some of them quite secret that, you know, only the two of them received. Sometimes, you know, much larger ones, like he gave the Compendium of Sadhanas, the Druptap Kuntu, in the summer of 1954 at the Doma Palace. And the Doma Palace had a little garden place with a very pleasant kind of building, you know, that was good for when it was warm. And so he gave the teachings there. And, you know, at one time I was in Walden, and I noticed, like, I forget what the teachings were. Maybe it was Lamdre, maybe Vajrayogini, I don't remember exactly, I'm sorry to say. But I noticed this Lama that was given a very high throne in the front. And I thought, oh, this Lama must be very important. Who is this Lama? Then I found out it's this Naglo Rinpoche. So he was highly honored by His Holiness because of everything he did in his previous, you know, life for His Holiness and Jetsun Kushok. And so this is Naglo Rinpoche. And then also he was a great Tumo master. Like Sakya Trinchen told me that he stayed in the Doma Palace during the winter. It's freezing cold there. They can't even give water offerings because it just freezes, you know, in the cups. That's how cold it is in Sakya in the winter. His room was always warm, because he was just one of these great Tumo masters. He would just emanate this heat. And so he's quite an extraordinary Lama. And so they regard him very fondly. Okay, so now I'm talking a little bit about Jetsun Kushok's early achievements. And so in 1948, at 10 years old, she did her first retreat. This is this Bhuta Dhamara Vajrapani retreat. And this is the typical retreat to start with. You know, almost all the daughters and sons of both palaces start with this retreat. And this retreat can prevent obstacles for longer retreats. And so this is started there. And then already, now she's only 11 years old. The Lakan Chemo, the great temple, was hit by lightning. So a big portion of it was destroyed. So both palaces had to raise a lot of money to restore the palace. At this time, the Punsok Palace is the Sakya Trinchen. So the Sakya Trinchen had more responsibility than the Doma Palace to raise the funds. And Sakya Trinchen sent his sons to collect money, especially Trinley Rinpoche. And then he also asked the Doma Palace, you know, I need some help. I can't do this on my own. The central government in Lhasa also gave some money, but it required a lot of funds. So Jetsun Kushok's father says, Jetsun Kushok, I would like you to go and collect donations for the rebuilding of this great temple, the Lakan Chemo. And so what she did, she went for, let's see, I'm trying to remember how many months, 4, 9, I think 5 months or a little bit longer. She went to the nomads in the north, and she gave empowerments, especially one very popular one, which is the long life empowerment of Amiteyas, the long life Buddha, with Hayagriva. And Hayagriva is the horse-headed deity which prevents obstacles. And she gave Powa. And so she received a lot of animals, different like fur skins, butter, all kinds of things she received. But she received a lot of animals. And her father had warned her, don't bring the animals back because they usually die when they move to a new place. So please, sell them and get the money. So in the end, she brought back quite a lot of money for the Lakan Chemo rebuilding. And she told me, she goes, except for some of the managers who accompanied her that needed to receive their share, everything else was given to the great temple rebuilding. So she was quite pleased that she could do this when she was 11 years old. So you can see already how capable Jetsun Kushok is, even at 11 years old, to do this. And then during this time, also when she was in the nomads, these monks from Sarah came and they wanted a divination about their abbot, who was now in jail. And this is a very long story too. I'm not going to get too involved in it, but it has to do with Reting Rinpoche. And so they were very worried about this abbot, their abbot. So she said, well, you have to do 100,000 prayers to Tara. Once you do that, it should be okay. And then in the end, it just so happened on the day that they completed those prayers, he was released from jail. And so she was good already at, divinations, 11 years old. Then another really major highlight of her youth is that after her retreat, which was of Hivadra in 1954, the winter of 1955, she taught Lamdre. And she was, I don't know, according to my knowledge, she's the only 4th Jetsuma to have taught Lamdre and the youngest one to do so. So she did that. And then in 1956, they returned to Lhasa because now Sakya Trinley is recognized as Sakya Trinley. So they wanted to pay homage and thank His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. And then while they were in Lhasa, they also met Jamyang Khyentse Chokyi Lodro, and they received a very important Nyingmapa teaching, the Longchen and Nyingtik, from him in Lhasa. So this was all done, basically within, she's not even 20 yet, and she did all of this. And this Jamyang Khyentse Chokyi Lodro, I don't have a photo of him here, but he seems to have a strong connection to the Jetsunmas because when he stayed, later he went to Sakya, he asked Jetsun Kushok to give him a little lung, a reading of something. And she says, oh, I don't know if I have it. He goes, no, I know you have it. So she gave him a lung, and then immediately he offered her a mandala. So he was seeing her as a lama, which was quite important because he's older. He was now in 1956, he dies in 1959. So he's a very old, esteemed lama, and he wants to receive something, make a connection, a strong connection with Jetsun Kushok, and he does it this way. And then later, the present reincarnation, right, Dzongsar Rinpoche, the present reincarnation, when the young Jetsuma that I'm going to talk about, Kunga Trinley Palger, when she's born, he offers her 12 magnificent flower baskets to rejoice in her birth. And I don't know what the significance of the 12 or the flower baskets are, but again, it's clear that he's establishing a relationship now with this young Jetsuma. And I also saw a photo of the young Jetsuma with Dzongtsar Rinpoche and many other people, but she's very close in front with Dzongtsar Rinpoche at Bodhgaya doing pujas. So he seems to have a strong connection to both of these Jetsumas, this Jamyang Khyentse Chokyi Lodro. And then in 1956, they go on pilgrimage to India. It's their first time that they went to India. And why they're going that year is that this was the 2500th anniversary of the Buddha's parinirvana. So the Dalai Lama and the Panchen Lama were invited officially to do a pilgrimage in India to celebrate the Buddha's anniversary. And they also went, but privately, they didn't join this, the major. So they went to all these major places in India. And at the time, I asked Jetsun Kushok, what did you think about it? She goes, well, it was quite difficult. You know, we didn't know any English. We didn't know any Hindi. We had a lot of trouble that way. In fact, I told my tutor, who is this famous abbot, Champel Sangpo, that why don't I study English? This would be helpful for me. And he goes, oh, you're just stick with your practice. You know, you don't need to know languages. And you see just in one generation how this will change tremendously. And I said, well, did anything bother you? She goes, no, I'm pretty even-minded. Not many things affect me, but it was pretty hard to find a place to wash. And I was a little worried about the snakes, you know? And so it was clearly an adventure for them. And they went on these pilgrim, I think, you know, the pilgrimage sites, like the birth of the Buddha, you know, and then where these other ones that you might not go to. And then where he was enlightened down there, Bodhgaya, then the first turning of the wheel. Wait, maybe I could, hold on. Where do you find that? Oh yeah, let me show this because I'm not doing very well. I'm trying to, oh no. Okay. Let me see if I could show you. Okay, here. So first is the place of the Buddha right here, right? Here's the place of the Buddha. And then this is where he's born. This is now in Nepal. Then this is where he became enlightened in Bodhgaya. Then after Bodhgaya, he traveled to Sarnath, where he gave the first teachings. And then he passed away in Kushinagar. Now there's other ones that I didn't point out, but these are the major ones that if anybody goes on pilgrimage, they try to visit. So they visited these sites. And then of course, after they became refugees, they did many of these pilgrimages over the years. Right, so this is Jetsun Kushok as the nun, which is the cover of my book. She's 19 years old. She's in Sakya. This is 1957. And I'm not going to talk about Sakya Trinzen's, I'm forgetting the word now. Okay, his enthronement as Sakya Trinzen, which happens in very early 1959. But I want to show you something about this. So this is kind of traditional Tibet. She's kind of dressed more as a monk than a nun, I would say. She has the shaved head, but here, any Tibetan would recognize that, you know, this is a nun. And if they find out that it's Jetsun Kushok, they would give her tremendous respect. But all this turns really topsy-turvy in 1959 when they have to leave Tibet, right? And because of the Chinese invasion, and now they become refugees in India. Now, of course, everybody's in turmoil. A lot of people die, a lot of Tibetans who were seeking refuge died on the road. my husband, he also left Tibet at that time, and he left with his uncle Chongla Rinpoche. And so one time my husband told me that they were so tired, and somebody was making tea, and he really wanted to stop to have tea. But his uncle says, no, we're not stopping to have tea. Come on, we got to go. Well, he found out that the people who had stopped to have tea were bombed by the Chinese, and they died. So you see, just a simple little decision like that, you don't know what's going to happen to you. And so when the Tibetans arrived in India, okay, the Indians tried to help them the best they could, but the Indians gave them lentils. Now, the Tibetans know nothing about lentils. Most of them didn't know that you had to cook them. So they started to eat them. They start to get sick. Now, nobody wants to eat lentils because maybe it's no good food. And so there was a lot of this, tremendous confusion. And of course, a lot of depression and sadness and anxiety and trauma, whatever you could think. It really was a very difficult time. And so Jetsun Kushok, the aunt, and His Holiness are in the same situation. And of course, Dr. Rinpoche, everybody's in that same situation. Dhamala, they're all in that same situation. And but for Jetsun Kushok, I want to kind of just point out that things radically changed for her, because here she is as a nun, and now they're in India. They sought refuge in India. They hear so many people are dying in Tibet. They don't know what to do. They can't really help physically the people in Tibet. So they decide to go on pilgrimage as a family and say as many prayers as possible for those who are in Tibet, for those who have passed away, for those who are suffering. So here they are in Tibet. And here's Jetsun Kushok. You see, she's very kind of shy, but she's still like with the shaved head and, kind of a chupa. Here's His Holiness, right? Here's seated, and here's the aunt, right? This is basically the nuclear family. Then there's a lot of entourage. Most of them, I don't know who they are. If anybody knows, you could tell me, but I really don't know who they are. So now, as long as she's with this group, she's fine. But if she goes any place in India, and I'm talking in 1960, not now, but in 1960, the only women who had shaved heads were widows, the only women. And you only became a widow if your husband died before you, right? So now you're regarded as highly inauspicious, highly. So now nobody wants even if it's a young girl with a shaved head, because she's going to just create problems. And so now Jetsun Kushok is facing a lot of difficulties, much more than Sakya Trinley. Now, Sakya Trinley, you might also talk about his hair, and he has long hair, and some people might say, well, wasn't that an issue? No, that wasn't an issue, because in India, there's a lot of yogis and sadhus who have long hair, and some of these yogis and sadhus are considered very powerful. So for Sakya Trinley, he didn't have to face the same difficulties that Jetsun Kushok had to face. And also, since he's Sakya Trinley, he was supported more than Jetsun Kushok. And so Jetsun Kushok, I really feel like it's remarkable, like what she had to undergo, in those years in India. And so, she couldn't stay with shaved head. It wasn't going to work. So she had to disrobe, though she always says, though I disrobed outwardly, I never lost my nun vows inwardly. And she started to, change her appearance because she had to fit in more. And so look at here, you see, she becomes a little bit more acceptable for the Indians to wear this. I found this on the internet, and it's a little blurry, I'm sorry to say, but I don't know whose photo it is. If anybody knows whose photo it's. And I just confirmed with His Holiness that this was Jetsun Kushok, because I wanted to make sure it was Jetsun Kushok. And His Holiness told me that this was taken in Missouri Woodstock School. And so the family moved a few places, but eventually they stayed in Missouri, which was cooler. It was a British hill station, and they stayed there. And so this must have been in the early 60s, because then Jetsun Kushok also, the aunt thought that Jetsun Kushok should get married, and she got married to Kushok in 1964. So I have a feeling this was before she was married, but she really had to kind of transform herself to fit in Indian society, to be just accepted as a woman. But by changing her appearance, this created other conflicts, because still people recognized her as Jetsun Kushok. So they want to bow to her, they want to show her respect. But now she doesn't feel comfortable because she's not dressed appropriately to receive that respect in her eyes. So there was these conflicts. And then there were stories about her being very rebellious and wanting to wear modern clothes, and go to the movies. And she did go to the movies. And who was her main companion? Lama Kunga. They went together to a lot of movies, Hindi movies, American movies. And American movies, a lot of them were Westerns. And I remember one time I visited Jetsun Kushok in Walden, and she's looking at her, phone, and sounds like some American, cowboy song. And it was from the Rio Bravo. So she goes, oh, I saw this when I was in India, and Ricky Nelson, he was crooning, I don't know, the song for Rio Bravo, so anyway, so she loved the movies. But the aunt thought that she should get married. She got married in 1964. She had a baby right away. And then eventually she met a woman called Germaine Gruel. There's a book about this time of Jetsun Kushok and Germaine Gruel. I have it on the link, but when I was writing this book, I wasn't aware of this. It was after I wrote this book that I discovered this. But Germaine Gruel was a good photographer, and she took a lot of photographs of Tibetan refugees, and she really helped the Tibetans as best as she could. So one of the ways that she helped Jetsun Kushok was that Jetsun Kushok already has 3 children at the time. And she goes, I'm going to get you to Canada. I know the ambassador, I'm going to get you to Canada. So she got her an immigrant visa to go to Canada. And Jetsun Kushok goes, I didn't think I was poor. I was fine in India. I like being with my family. But then when I received this visa for Canada, my family encouraged me to go to Canada. And so I did, with Kushok. But going to Canada was not easy for them, because they were not supported financially at all. And they had to do a lot of physical work, very, very hard work. And at one place, they had to work in mushroom farm and carry these 20-pound boxes of mushrooms, on their backs. And so you can imagine the transition in 10 years from being that nun, well-respected in Tibet, to now some new immigrant in Canada that has to do hard work. I mean, tremendous adjustment. And I think some of this was that Jetsun Kushok could handle. Well, she has a great partner in Kushok, that's for sure. And her practice really helped her deal with so many of these difficult things that she had to undergo. And then eventually, His Holiness came to the United States in the late 70s. He was asked, aren't there any women, Lamas? He goes, yes, yes, my sister, she's hiding in Canada. So Jetsun Kushok told me when His Holiness came to visit her, he suggested, she said, he did not demand, but he suggested that it would be good if you would start teaching the Westerners, they could it would be very beneficial for them. And you've had a lot of their similar experiences in terms of juggling, the children and earning money. And so that, you could relate to them in that way as well. So that's how she started teaching. And of course, she became very, very well known. She has a lot of centers all over the world, and she has many students. So this is where I'd like to end with Jetsun Kushok. And I just have a few more slides about the young Jetsuma. All right, is that okay? Yeah. Oh, well, here's another photo of the aunt, His Holiness, and Jetsun Kushok in India. So you see she's really becoming like a Tibetan, young Tibetan woman. You really wouldn't, if you didn't know this was Jetsun Kushok, you wouldn't know who she was. Whereas you see Sakya Trinley, it's still pretty apparent that he's Sakya Trinley. And here she is as a Lama. So now I'm going to talk about the oldest daughter of the 42nd Sakya Trinley, Ratnavajra. So here is her whole family. The young Jetsuma is right in front, Kunga Trinley Palger. Then there's the Dungse, the son, right in front of his father. Then the young Jetsuma in front of the mother, Doma Kalden. Now, this Jetsuma has a lot of firsts. And one of the things that she's the first one recognized as a Chukul. And this is her previous rebirth. So I'll show you the name here. See, Chukul of Kandro Tare Lamo, who was born 1938, 2002. And she was a Nyingmapa Tertun, and her father was Apang Tertun. Now, who is the reincarnation of Apang Tertun? The 41st Sakya Trinley. He had 2 reincarnations. Can you imagine this? And so he's also the present Jetsuma's grandfather. So this is really quite involved. I can't even really, I find this quite interesting about this. All right, and on one of the links, I gave you a book, which is about Kandro Tare Lamo's life by Holly Gailey. So if you're interested in knowing more about her, you can read her book. And so the young Jetsuma, she's the first one to live in exile with economic security and grow up in India because, for His Holiness and Jetsun Kushok, when they arrived in India, it was very tough. It wasn't really until, the sons were born that they started to have like kind of a decent income. And now they, now they have full economic support. There's no worry about that now. And she wanted to be a vegan for spiritual reasons. She's also trained traditionally at home, but attends a small school and receives modern education. And her mother is in charge of all of this. And her mother feels that, both things are very good, that right now you need a modern education, but of course, as a Jetsuma, you should be trained traditionally. And when she was 10 years old, she became a nun, and this was her choice to become a nun. And then look at all the languages that she learned, Jetsun Kushok is telling her tutor she wants to learn English. He's scandalized. And now 2 generations later, it's a bonus. It's beneficial to have so many languages. And so she knows Tibetan, English, Hindi, and Chinese. Now, some of the common aspects between Jetsun Kushok and the young Jetsumas, and there's more than one Jetsuma. You could see already 2 Jetsumas in Ratnavajra's family. And then there's, I think there's 1 Jetsuma in Gyanavadra's family. I don't think two, I think one. All right, so they all received empowerments and teachings, including the essential lamdre, many which were taught by grandfather and the father. I asked Jetsun Kushok if she teaches the young Jetsumas, and she goes, no. You know, the grandfather, her Sakya Trinley, the 41st Sakya Trinley, is still alive. Their father is alive, so they're receiving mostly from the father and the grandfather. And they go on a lot of pilgrimages in India. They participate in the rituals performed at the holy sites. And when Jetsun Kushok had, you know, a little bit more ability to travel, she took quite a few students on pilgrimages to India and Nepal. She enjoyed doing that. And the young Jetsuma, when she was 10, was sent to Tibet, Dergay area, that photo I showed you in the beginning. She gave many blessings to people. She gave some sort of short teachings, and she was very, very well received by the Tibetans there. And as everyone in the clone family, they're trained to develop compassion for all beings. And so one method is to give to the disadvantaged. And the young Jetsuma, when she gives to the disadvantaged is during her birthday. So instead of receiving many gifts at her birthday, she also gives gifts to others on her birthday. And this is a way to kind of train her mind. So these are kind of some of the common aspects. And I think that is it. I'm just going to end here and rejoicing in the Jetsumas. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yes.
So if anybody has any questions, I don't know if you want to type them in the chat. And I think maybe we stop. Do you want to stop the share?
I stopped the share. Okay.
Yeah, and then we can get everybody on the screen. Oh, and Amy has a question, her hand up.
Okay, yeah, Amy.
One thing that struck me was when you were talking about Jamyang Khyentse Lodro.
Yeah.
Zonskar Khyentse Rinpoche, I had heard, said to his students that they should take Vajrayogini from Jetsun Kushok because she was Vajrayogini.
Yeah,
she was the only
that
one
I don't
living.
doubt. Yes.
And so that was another connection from Jamyang.
Yes, that's
Khyentse
right.
Lodro.
That's right. And you know, he also received it from her.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah.
But that he said that she was the only one living now.
Oh, really?
Yes. That's what I had heard, but that was when I was in India. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's remarkable. It is.
Yeah.
We're lucky to have met her, right?
Yeah, and thank you so much. It's been wonderful.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question. Since the start of new system of 3-year term Sakya Treason, what's tremendous changes have taken place in the Podrangs? I noticed that Damo Kaldin, wife of His Holiness the 42nd Sakya Treason, kept her Damo title. Was that one difference from the past?
No, they all get, yeah. Oh, okay. I have to explain the titles a little better. There's one more title, and that's Jalyum. So Jalyum is any wife who becomes, oh, this is what you're referring to. Now I understand what you're referring to. Yeah. I think this is in deference because the wife of the 41st Sakya Trinley is still alive. So they would not want two Jalyums at the same time. So the wife of the 41st 41st Sakya Trinley is known as Chalyum. And then the other wives are known as Damos. And now I don't see that title Gyum as much. I just see Damo as the title. Does that explain it?
That was from Kunga Punsak. Oh, thank you. He says thank you.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And then from Lara, Elisabeth, what are dotses? Are they like a curtsy in English? Like the
Jungseis?
dotses. I think
Oh,
it's like
Jungseis, it's one sort of,
or-
I forget what the
or Doni?
equivalent is. It's some sort of currency, you know, money. But I forget right now what the equivalent is. But it was quite a lot of money, let's put it that way.
Thank you for your talk, Elisabeth. Wonderful job. That's from Susan.
well,
And
thank
Kunga
you.
Punsak says, yes, he did. That helped. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you very much.
Amy, did you, or is that your hand up from before? I think maybe. Let's see.
That was from before.
Oh.
But I do have a question that I wanted to know if there was a remake connection because of this connection with Zonsar Khyentse Rinpoche and Jamyang Choki Lodro.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You know, His Holiness has a strong Nyingmapa connection, right? And this starts from the time of Samye with Padmasambhava and the first monks of the Kon family were, you know, Nyingmas. So there's always a very strong Nyingma connection with the Sakyas. So I would
Thank you.
consider that remake.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, maybe shall we end here?
Yes, let me, I'm going to post those links again one more time in case anybody missed it. Okay.
Thank you so very much, Elisabeth. It has been delightful and informative and engaging and relevant and everything. It's been wonderful
Oh, good.
seeing you.
Good. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Stephanie. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Oops, I forgot. I didn't, hold on. I didn't send it to everyone. Okay. Okay, there we go. All right. Well, thank you so much, Elisabeth.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
We're going to have you back for something else. You have to write another book.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Liz.
Pleasure.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Just wonderful. Thank you so much, Elizabeth and everyone.
Yeah, my pleasure.